I woke up gasping for air. My hands gripped the edges of my old bed. I stared wildly at the calendar hanging on my wall. May 14, I whispered to the empty room. It actually happened. I am back. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. In my past life, today was the day my life ended. My brother Liam had called me in a panic, begging for help. He scammed a violent street gang. I ran to save him, but I only ended up jumping in front of a heavy glass jar of acid meant for his face. My reward for saving him? He and my toxic parents, Sarah and Robert, hid my medical files. They stole my victim compensation money. They left me to die in agonizing pain. Not this time, I muttered, wiping the cold sweat from my forehead. Suddenly, my phone started buzzing. The bright screen lit up the dark shadows of my bedroom. Incoming call, Liam. My breath caught in my throat. This was the exact moment. The desperate call that ruined my past life. I stared at the glowing screen. Slowly, a cold, dark smile formed on my lips. You are on your own now, Liam, I whispered to the phone. I pressed the power button. The screen went completely black. The buzzing stopped. A beautiful silence filled my bedroom. I grabbed a small duffel bag from my closet. I quickly threw in some comfortable clothes, my toothbrush, and my laptop. I sneaked out the back door into the cool night air and drove straight to my best friend's apartment. I pounded my fist on her front door. Maya, open up, it is me. The door swung open. Maya stood there in her oversized pajamas, rubbing her tired eyes. What are you doing here? She asked, yawning loudly. It is incredibly late. I need a safe place to crash tonight, I said, holding up my bag. Can I come in? Of course, she said, stepping aside quickly. Did something happen? You look totally pale. I am just done, I said, dropping my heavy bag onto her living room floor. I am completely done playing the savior for my awful family. Maya closed the door and locked it tight. Is it Liam again? Yes, I lied easily. He is in trouble again. But I am not fixing his mess this time. Maya smiled warmly. Good for you. I have been telling you to cut him off for years. You always put yourself last to save him. I know, I agreed. But that stops tonight. Are you hungry? She asked. I can order a pizza. Pepperoni and extra cheese? I asked, feeling my stomach rumble. You know it, Maya laughed. She grabbed her phone and placed the late-night order. So, what exactly did your brother do this time? I do not know. And I honestly do not care, I replied, sitting heavily on her soft sofa. He makes his own foolish choices. He can finally deal with his own consequences. Wow, Maya said, sitting right next to me. You sound really different tonight. You sound stronger. I finally woke up, I said softly, looking her in the eyes. 30 minutes later, the hot pizza arrived. We sat on the floor, eating greasy slices directly from the cardboard box. We laughed loudly at a silly comedy movie playing on her television. This is really nice, I said, taking a large bite. It is, Maya agreed. You should stay here for a few days. Take a real break from your parents. They only ever call you when Liam messes up his life. They will probably blow up my phone tomorrow morning, I said, taking a sip of my cold soda. But I will handle them. I am not scared of them anymore. I will back you up, Maya promised, bumping her shoulder against mine. If your dad tries to yell at you here, I will kick him right out of my apartment. I appreciate that, Maya. You are the only real family I have. Always, she smiled. Later that night, Maya fell asleep on the couch. I lay awake on the guest bed, staring quietly at the ceiling. The city outside the window was peaceful. But across town, in a dark, dirty alley, I knew exactly what was happening. The gang was cornering Liam. They were holding the heavy glass jar. I felt no guilt. I felt no panic. I closed my eyes, pulled the warm blanket over my shoulders, and finally drifted into a peaceful sleep. When I finally turned my phone back on the next morning, the screen instantly froze. I had 42 missed calls and 30 unread text messages. I calmly drank my morning coffee, grabbed my keys, and headed to the city hospital. I made sure to put on a mask of fake shock before walking through the automatic sliding doors. In the crowded waiting room, my mother, Sarah, spotted me instantly. She lunged at me, her face red with rage. "Where were you?" she screamed, grabbing my jacket. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" "I was asleep," I said, gently but firmly pulling her hands off me. "What happened?" "Liam is in surgery," my father, Robert, shouted from the corner. He stomped over, glaring at me. "He was attacked last night. If you had answered your phone, you could have picked him up. He is a grown man, I replied coldly. I am not his personal bodyguard. How dare you speak to us like that? Sarah cried, bursting into loud theatrical tears. Your brother is fighting for his life and you only care about your sleep. Before my father could yell again, Dr. Eris walked into the tense room. His face was grim and exhausted. Family of Liam? He asked, holding a silver clipboard. We are his parents, Robert said, pushing past me. How is my boy? He is stable, but I must be honest with you, Dr. Eris said with a heavy sigh. Liam took a direct hit of a highly corrosive acid to his face and upper chest. The damage is permanent and life-altering. He will need multiple reconstructive surgeries. Sarah let out a piercing wail and collapsed into a plastic chair. We will do whatever it takes, doctor, Robert said, his voice shaking. He immediately turned his sharp eyes toward me. You have that savings account. The one you use for your apartment fund. Transfer it to me today. I looked at him with dead, empty eyes. No. The waiting room went completely silent. Even Sarah stopped crying to stare at me. What did you just say? Robert growled, stepping dangerously close to my face. I said no, I repeated clearly. His debts and his mistakes are not my problem. I am not paying for this. You selfish brat, Robert roared. He raised his heavy hand in the air to strike me. Robert, put your hand down right now. A booming voice echoed through the room. My Uncle Tom stepped directly in front of me, using his broad shoulders to block my father. He had always been the only decent person in my family. Stay out of this, Tom, Robert yelled. She is refusing to help her own brother. She does not owe you or Liam a single dime. Uncle Tom shouted back, pointing an angry finger at my father. You have treated her like a servant her entire life. Liam brings this trouble on himself, and you always force her to fix it. He is family. Sarah sobbed loudly from her chair. Family protects each other, Uncle Tom said in disgust. You two only protect Liam. You are trying to bleed her dry. And I will not allow it. I looked at my parents. For the first time in my entire life, they had absolutely no control over me. I watched them choke on their own powerlessness. They were sputtering, angry, and completely helpless. Thank you, Uncle Tom, I said softly. Go home, kid, he whispered over his shoulder. I will handle these two. You are dead to us! Sarah screamed at my back. Good, I said without turning around. I pushed open the heavy hospital doors, turned my back on my toxic family, and confidently walked out of the ward. The real climax hit 3 days later when Detective Hayes called me into the local police station. My parents had desperately tried to frame me. They actually told the police. I purposely ignored Liam's calls to let him get attacked. I sat calmly across from the detective's metal desk. Your parents are making some very serious accusations, Detective Hayes said, crossing his arms. They claim you knew Liam was in danger. My parents are looking for someone to blame. For my brother's criminal lifestyle? I replied smoothly. I reached into my bag and handed him a thick manila folder. Maya had helped me put it together the day before. What is this? Hayes asked, opening the flap. Proof, I said simply. Bank statements and text records showing Liam stole thousands of dollars from his ex-girlfriend, Chloe. It also shows he borrowed heavily from a violent local loan shark named Marcus. Hayes quickly scanned the documents, his eyes widening. Chloe and Marcus teamed up to ambush him, I continued. I had nothing to do with it. My hands are completely clean, Detective. This changes everything, Hayes muttered, closing the folder. You are free to go. Thank you for your cooperation. I left the gloomy police station and walked to a bright coffee shop across the street. My boss, Lily, was waiting for me at a corner table. How did it go? She asked, handing me a warm latte. Perfectly, I smiled. I am completely cleared. I am so glad to hear that, Lily said kindly. Because that promotion in the Seattle office is officially yours. It is a fresh start in a new city. Your ticket out of here. I accept, I said, feeling a massive weight lift off my chest. I will pack my bags tonight. But before I left town forever, I had one last stop to make. I visited Liam's quiet hospital room. He was lying in the bed, his head and chest completely wrapped in thick white bandages. He looked pathetic. When he saw me standing in the doorway, he started crying. Please, Liam sobbed, his voice muffled through the gauze. I am so sorry. Mom and Dad have no money to save me. You have to help me pay for the doctors. I walked slowly to the edge of his bed. I looked down at the brother who had let me die in my past life. I cannot help you, Liam, I said, my voice empty of any sympathy. Why are you doing this? He cried miserably. I am your brother. I leaned in close so only he could hear my next words. Because I remember everything, I whispered darkly into his ear. I remember the glass jar. I remember the stolen medical files. I remember dying while you smiled. Liam went perfectly still. His single visible eye widened in pure terror. He didn't understand how I knew, but he knew I was telling the truth. This is exactly what you deserve, I said, standing up straight. I walked out of his room and met my lawyer, Mr. Vance, in the hospital lobby. He was holding a stack of legal documents. Are they signed? I asked. Yes, Mr. Vance said, coldly efficient as always. I just served your parents with a strict restraining order. If they contact you, they will be arrested immediately. Your legal ties to them are officially severed. Thank you, Mr. Vance, I said, shaking his hand. I pushed the lobby doors open and stepped out into the bright, warm sunlight. I took a deep breath of fresh air. I was completely free, leaving them all behind to burn in the very hell they had created.